All right, let's get into this. So, our first review of the day, first and only review of the day,
Mhm.
is going to be for the film called Heretic. Heretic, which is starring Hugh Grant, is directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods. Scott Beck and Brian Woods, they also were on A Quiet Place, day one. There, they were
No, they
also
did the original A Quiet Place. They wrote it.
they wrote it. They wrote the original Quiet Place there. They're writers on that. They're coming in here with this film, Quiet Place. And he also stars two young women, Sophie Thatcher. People might know Sophie Thatcher. She was in
Yellow Jackets.
Yellow Jackets. She was in The Mandalorian.
As
She
trash, I think.
Yep. She was. I'm sorry, not The Mandalorian. In the Book of Boba Fett.
The Book of Fett.
I'm sorry. I
It's
got
fine.
confused because that became the Mandalorian show
Yeah,
after like the
it's,
last.
it's fine. It's fine.
She was in that. She was in Maxine in that as well. So she's a up and coming young actress there, Sophie Thatcher. And you also have another young actress by the name of Chloe East as well. Chloe East, who's been in things like A Generation. She was in things like The Fablemans
Mhm.
there, which was that Steven Spielberg movie. So you have kind of a reverse knock knock situation. Remember that movie Knock Knock with Keanu Reeves there? You know, those two women coming to his door in the rain, cold, wet,
Mhm.
shivering, and he kind of invited them in and it was like, hey, let me help you out. Let me get you out of the rain there. And they kind of flip the script on him and goes like, you know what I mean? They like, oh, you thought you was about to have some fun.
Mhm.
And kind of a reverse kind of situation here where you get the women that come to the door. They're Mormons. They're trying to spread the good word. These two women, Sister Barnes, who's Sophie Thatcher, Sister Paxton, who's Chloe East, trying to do good, trying to spread the word here, and comes to the house of Hugh Grant, who plays Mr. Reed. And yeah, he kind of flips the scripts on them and kind of puts them in this game, this test of religion, of faith. You know, what's going to happen to them, imprisons them, and it's about kind of how they're going to make their way out and what can they do to survive this kind of sadistic man here. Yeah, so I'm gonna pass it to Dusk, get his thoughts on it. Dusk, what are your thoughts on Heretic?
Heretic is one of these newer horror movies by A24. A24 has some. It's kind of a half and half. Sometimes you get something good with A24. Sometimes you get something not great with A24. But they've always been good at least balancing their budgets and picking very small, specific scripts with very specific intentions on whatever they're trying to talk about. This movie happens to be more focused on belief and faith and really focusing on it, especially with the character of the Hugh Grant, who welcomes the two characters, Sophie and Chloe, into his home. And from there, they talk a little and get to know each other. And then they start noticing factors about him that start to kind of put them on edge, but they're friendly enough. And then that divulges into a setting where they kind of are now trapped with him and deal with him. And because this is this nature, it becomes more of a bottleneck movie, and the strength of that really has to come down to the actors involved. Fortunately for this one, I think the actor and actresses really do a good job in the role of this. I think Hugh Grant honestly just plays a very solid kid. He plays himself a lot, but I do think there's a bit of nuance here that he is able to portray in a more sinister character while still being not quite over the top at first. That slowly divulges more and more while still keeping that character. As for the girls, I think they do a solid job of playing more in it. One being a little more innocent than the other, and one being a little bit more uh, ready to commit action or be a little bit more forward with action. That they kind of bounce off of each other. I would be curious to see someone who would see this with someone who is from a Mormon or the Latter Day Saints. I would be interested to see how they feel about it, but I thought they gave it good enough respect to the both its religion and more on a spiritual religious aspect of, well, what do you believe in, what do you put your faith in, and he's going to use that to exploit these characters.
Mm, yeah. Um, and Hugh Grant in this movie, he's been much talked about in this film for his
Mhm.
performance. We talked a little bit about it earlier. Hugh Grant, who's had a little bit of a career resurgence a little bit these past few years. In things like the recent Dungeons and Dragons movie he was in, which I thought he did a good job there. He's mostly been kind of used as a comedic role in some things there, like in Paddington movies where he played the villain in that, which he did a really good job. And usually when he pop up and when you see him in kind of these various roles, he usually does really well in it. Here, it's more of a horror role given the movie that he's in here. And I think he does a really good job in this, and really the build up and the tension to it, leading to with these women, and then with the positions that he puts these women in, is very good. And it's a horror movie that's not a bloody horror movie. It's not
Mhm.
incredibly bloody. It's not incredibly gory. It's not.
It's more of a psychological thriller.
Yeah, it's a psychological thriller there. It's playing with the anticipation of something happening,
This
and
isn't no long legs.
yeah, you see that, and then, we had a kind of another discussion about a movie called, what was that movie with Brandy, The Front Room?
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Oh my god. Compared to this,
yeah.
this is a masterclass taking something of that setup compared to Front Room, which is amateur hour.
Yeah, so that was kind of a similar thing there where I was trying to build up a lot of tension, but the problem with that movie is it never really led to anything,
Mhm.
really impactful or meaningful there, and it was also trying to say something, but I think it kind of failed at that. Heretic, I think, does the opposite. I think it does build up tension. You can't just build up tension and
Mhm.
then don't lead to anything. I think, yes, this movie builds up tension, but it actually leads to something, and it actually does something there with that, and it constantly is progressing more and more as the movie goes on, which I think is also very impressive there. And also give credit to the women in this as well. I mean, Sophie Thatcher there, who I've seen her in other stuff before. I think she does an excellent job in Yellow Jackets. That's where I very, very first saw her there. And Sophie Thatcher, who plays Sister Barnes. Like you said, the dynamic between the two of them. Barnes is more of the, I would say, closed off one,
Mhm.
more of the one that's more serious, compared to the other ones. Sister Paxton there, who's played by Chloe East, who I don't think I've seen her in anything else before. I think this is my first time seeing her in anything. Who's much more open, much more friendly, much more, you know what I mean, kind of trusting there, and you see that as kind of they're going around the town there,
She
and
comes in more with an open heart and an open mind, really full in. Barnes, she comes in welcomingly enough, but there is a level of more, worldly or a bit more of a wisdom, a bit more closed off, friendly, but to a point where, there's some things that that Barnes notices that Paxton is oblivious to.
mm, yeah. So yeah, you see that when they're kind of right around the town, and then one of them, one of the other teenagers in town, like pulls the girl's pants down and everything like that when she takes a photo with her. So yeah, you kind of see that dynamic play out there throughout the course of this, which is also very good to see. Um, and it's not a long movie; it's only an hour and 50 minutes, so it
Perfect
does the
amount.
perfect amount of time, doesn't belabor the point. Um, do you think with this movie being such a heavy focus on religion, do you think it's handled in a good way? Do you think it's kind of sloppy at any moments? Do you think it's
It
too heavy-handed? Do you think
There are some elements, of course, that are a little heavy-handed. There are some elements, of course, that go over the top, but they come from the point of view from the villain. Most of the religious aspect of it is more from a spiritual focus and what do you believe in? Do you believe in there's an afterlife? And really kind of testing what they're preaching. It's almost like, do you believe actually what you're preaching?
Mm,
And ultimately, the movie is about, believing in faith and do the characters, their situation they're put into, do they have faith? Do they have faith in the situation, both in how they're going to get out of it and also what they're going to do to get out, and they have faith in each other and getting it. I think it doesn't it's not too negative on religion. If anything, it's a little bit more like you got to have something, even if there's something you got to believe in something. Uh,
mm,
but there are worse things to believe in, and there are bad things, and it makes it very clear what Hugh Grant's character, Mr. Reed, believes in is not a good thing,
mm.
and it's a deep perversion of what they're trying to bring in. So I thought they did well enough, and yeah, you really can't mistake by the end of what he when he actually goes into his monologue of what the one true faith is. It's like, yeah, there's a reason why he's the villain.
Mm. Yeah, and there is a moment. I wonder if that's when this comes on streaming DVD. If that moment, like he compares he starts talking about the all the derivative nature of things, and they're the original, and then there's the copies and everything. He starts going through the music as an example, and then board games. I wonder if that'll be clipped and people put that on there and go like,
Oh,
"Whoa,
absolutely.
this is so
No,
deep." Yeah.
yeah. Let's be for real. They will very much do so, and I'm sure it will be used in arguments from both sides. And I think it's fair enough. Honestly, I didn't take it away from me to enjoying the movie in itself, but I could see where people might be upset by it or might take issues with it.
Yeah. So what would be your final thoughts rating
Mm,
for
I actually going into this movie, I saw the trailer beforehand, and I went, "This could be okay." A24 has hit and miss, so we'll see how it goes. And I was actually pleasantly surprised that it wasn't too bad. And I actually enjoyed the performances. And as a bottleneck, it relies on those performances and the situation to get you through this movie. It wasn't long. It didn't belabor its point. It set up the characters, utilized them. The first 2/3 of the movie, I think, are very strong, and then the last third, it does pull off its twist, and I thought that was fine as well. But it definitely, you could definitely tell where it's like, okay, yeah, you gotta get to the ending at this point. You got to go where you wrap this up, and it did feel a little bit rushed at the end, but that didn't take away from the very end of the movie where I thought it ended on a fine enough note. With that said, I think honestly I would give this a solid tune in. This is pretty nice. This is not too bad.
okay, solid tune in. Um, yeah, I mean, gets does job with its runtime, doesn't belabor the point like Dust said. Does a good job, with the performances here. And like with a movie like this, it's a very performance driven movie. Very much. It's not like I said. It's more of a thriller, not really horror. And people say, what's the difference between thriller and horror? I always say a horror is more supernatural. It's more something like that that's in play,
Mhm.
and thriller is more of a human impact. Your
Mm.
serial killer or stalker or somebody like that. And this falls more in the thriller kind of category.
It,
Um,
that's why both genres can kind of weave in and out of each other.
Yeah, because when you're really watching the movie, it does play with that. It does play with those themes of supernatural, and is possibly something supernatural happening or going on here, and with all this talk of religion, is there gonna be a religious experience kinda happening? So it does play with that, and even the way the movie ends, it ends in an ambiguous type of way where it is, okay, is there something religious kinda happening, with this character? So I think it still does play with that there. Great performances from all 3, Hugh Grant, Sophie Thatcher, Chloe East. They all do a wonderful job in this, and selling it, and it's primarily just them. I mean, it's just
Mm.
them in this house, bottleneck film as Dustin described it, um, and they really do a good job at acting off each other, how things progress throughout the story, how things ratchet up, the tension ratchets it up, and like I said, it builds to something, and it's going somewhere. It's not just building up the tension just to lay an egg at the end of it, and I think it is a solid ending there, and does end well. Because I've seen some movies that do a great job of building up attention and they go absolutely nowhere, and it's like, what the fuck was the point of that?
Yeah.
And I don't think this movie does that. So, yeah, I would say it's a strong tune in for me,
Mm.
for Heretic there, and Dust also gives a strong tune in there. So, two strong tune ins all around for Heretic there.
Mm.
Um,